Oh no! Just as well I'm not on the scaffolding, isn't it? So we learnt something. I don't know what we learnt, but we learnt something. Now I'm out of breath and I'm dizzy and I can't remember what I was doing. This one's proving difficult to start. So I think we'll have a look at the points, see if they're furred up, got dirty because it's been in storage. Well, let's do that. Start with getting the bonnet open. Right, so we're going to want to get the plugs out, and I want to get it timed up, see where the engine's at. So if we start with the plugs out, which are loose, I've already loosened them. So I get them out, and then I can turn it over to get it timed up. And then I can take the distributor out. And the whole point of timing the engine up first is so that when I get the distributor out, I know where to put it back in and it's going to fire in the right place, if you see what I mean. Whereas if I just pull the distributor out willy-nilly anywhere, you know, I can mark where the rotor arm is and say, oh, well, that's where I had it. But if you get confused or anything goes wrong, you're like, oh, yeah, all over the place. So let's start by doing it properly, get it timed up. So when I say timed up, what we're looking for, we're looking to get piston number 1 at TDC, which is top dead centre, with the valves closed for number 1 chamber, and that would mean the valves will be open on number 4 because it's opposite to it. So that's what we're looking at. So if it's the valves are closed on number 1 and the pistons at the top of its travel, that means it will be firing, it will be sparking, which means that's what we're doing. So that's what we're trying to do is ascertain TDC on number 1. So that's number 1 there. That one, that's 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's the one we're looking at. So we want to get that piston at the top. Now we're going to have to work out how to do that, aren't we? Because we can't see it very easily. So what we'll do, we'll just stick a screwdriver down the hole and then turn the engine over till we get it up. Now you have to be careful doing this because you don't want to, screwdriver to bend, get stuck in there and bend or something stupid. You've got to be a bit careful. But if you use your noddle, you'll be all right. Right, so we pop that in there like that. And then we're on the top of the piston there. Then if we're careful and turn it over, we can see that come up to the top of its travel. So we'll watch the piston come up or go down, because we don't know where the piston is at the minute, but I'm assuming because that's popped down in there quite a long way. Look how much I've had to drop that down. So if I put my hand on there, it's gone down that far into there. So I reckon the piston's down the bore a bit. So if we turn the engine over, now what I'm going to do is, see here, I've got hold of the fan, and I'm going to have to sort of push onto the belts a bit to try and keep it tight as I turn it over. So if we wind that over, you see the screwdrivers coming up? See, it's coming up, still rising. All right, okay, is that coming up at the top? Right, that's at the top. You see there, it's sort of, see, I'm rocking it, it's on the rock. It's what we call on the rock. So it's just going over top dead centre. So piston's at the top of its travel, but we don't know where the valves are. So the valves could be overlapping open or they could be closed. But what we know is that that's at top dead centre, that one's at top dead centre, and it's whether the valves are open or not. So you remember the old trick we did with the tube that time? Let's get a suitable bit of tube and we'll blow down there. Remember we were doing it on that Ferrari, weren't we? That time, trying to work out where the when we're doing the timing belts on it, working out where the camshafts are. So suitable bit of tube. There you go, just right for siphoning petrol. Get a lot out with that, wouldn't you? Right, so what we got is if we put this down, let's get these plugs out of the way. So you can see we've sort of pushed that down onto there. It sits nicely on there, doesn't it? So that sits down on there nicely. So what we're going to do, we put it in number 1 and we're blowing it. Well, there's resistance there. So let's try number 4. There's no resistance there. Let's try this one. There's not resistance there. Not resistance on number 2. Let's try number 1 again. So when I push down onto that, Right, so that's sealing. So we know the valves are closed and we know there's pistons at top dead centre. So we know that's what we want. So let's just have a look at our distributor. And then that should be firing on number 1, shouldn't it? So that's number 1 spark plug lead. If we trace that all the way back through to here, so we pull that one off so we know which one we're dealing with. That's number 1, isn't it? So we've taken off of there. So when we take this cap off, the rotor arm should be pointing at number 1. You know, that's what we're expecting to see, isn't it? So let's just take this off because that's the one that'll be firing. There you go. Yeah, pointing at number 1. So there we go. So we know that's right. So we know we're timed up there. So we can take the distributor out and then I can muck around the points on the bench and see what we're going to got. So if I take this cap off, get it out of the way. Now there's a grub screw over the back, but I've already undone that. So we should be able to just draw this distributor out. He says, might need a little leverage on it. If you watch the rotor arm as I lift this up and see what it does. Now, if it's just keywayed on, it won't move. But if it's on a cog, it might be on a cog. Oh, that's our advance. That's our vacuum advance. We'll take that off. If this is on a cog drive, you'll see that move round as we raise it. So let's see what it does. Which is what we've got to remember when we refit it. You see it's turning round? Yeah, look, you see it's turning around. So that means we're going to have a helical gear on there. So when we fit this back in, we'll have to remember that if we want that to end up in the right position, we're going to have to let that cog turn round, aren't we? See, look, this helical gear. So when you fit that, you've got to have the rotor arm in that position for it to end up there when it's fitted, you see? Because as that will go down, that will twist round, won't it? As it meshes into where it's got to go. So that's something we've got to remember. Anyway, that's for the future. Have a look at that in a minute on the bench. Now, what I thought we'd do whilst we've got this here, because I'm wobbling on about this thing and what it does. Oh, someone wants me, obviously in demand. Right, so what we're looking at, weren't we? We were, can you imagine, the valves are closed on this cylinder. Number 1, the valves are closed, and the pistons at the top of its travel. So, and by blowing down there, we felt compression. So we know that's what's happening. So that's what I'm talking about, is how to time an engine up. Now, I haven't looked at any timing marks. I've literally just done it by raising the piston up and using that to see what we've got. Now, you can use dial indicators and other things, but we don't need to muck about like that for what we're doing. We just wanted to ascertain that, and we double checked it by seeing where the rotor arm was. But what I'm saying is, if by blowing down here, that's what I was on about, wasn't I? So we put that in there and we felt resistance. And we didn't on this one, there's no resistance. And then on this one, again, but we hear a different noise on that one, and that we can hear the valves open, and I can hear it's blowing through the carburetor. So it must be that the that must be that the inlet valve is open, which is why we can hear it blowing through there. Now, obviously, if you hear an exhaust valve open, we'd hear it blowing through the exhaust, but we won't hear that because it's the back of the car. But you could sort of hear it, couldn't you? You could hear it when I was blowing it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a bit of tissue paper or a little bit of rag on there and just see if we can see the air moving, just out of interest. If we can see that move at all when I blow down there. It might do, might not. So we're putting that on there, aren't we? Sealing that, and then we're going to blow as hard as I possibly can. I don't know if I've got enough breath for this. There you go, look. Yeah, so that's proving the point, isn't it? That's proving the point. So look, put that over there. So that inlet valve on number 3 is open. Now I wonder if we get any movement on this one, but I bet we don't, because I think it's only the exhaust valve that's open. Nothing there. And this one's probably got both inlet and exhausts open. So let's see by blowing down here if that does anything. But that'll be both, because these will be on the rock. They'll be crossing over between opening and closing of the inlet and the exhaust. It barely moved, did it? I don't think that moved at all. Something happened. Let's do that again on this one. Well, there's a thing, isn't it? So we learnt something. I don't know what we learnt, but we learnt something. Anyway, that's why I'm blowing down here, if you didn't understand before why I was doing it. So we're just showing that bit. Now I'm out of breath and I'm dizzy and I can't remember what I was doing. We was going to have a look at the points, weren't we? Right, we've got the strip out on the bench, the distributor. I've taken the points out, taken the rotor arm off. So yes, so the rotor arm can only go in one place. There's a little pimple in there, which I don't know if we can see. There's a little pimple there. So that can only go in one place. That lines up with there. So you can see that you can't put it on in the wrong place. Right, so that goes in one place. And we knew about that. So that's how we know. And that's where that's pointing to. The individual pickup on the distributor. I'll grab a cap and we'll see. Is where it will fire to. So that's being driven round by the engine. That's turning round this bit and turning the rotor arm round. And it's also opening and closing the points via these 4 cams because we've got a 4-cylinder. So yeah, so that will go around like that. It might run anti-clockwise, it might run clockwise. I don't know because I'd have to have a look at that. It depends how it's gear driven off of the engine or where the gear is. And then that's that, and then of course that lines up. That lines up with the corresponding pickup on here, which is how I was telling which cylinder it's firing on. Do you see what I mean? And if you see the cap's actually marked, you see 1, 3, 4, 2. Okay, so then that would go down the individual spark plug wire. I unplugged that one so we can remember which one we're mucking around with. That would go down the spark plug wire and HT lead. Or spark plug wire to the actual spark plug and make it spark. But anyway, that's what we're dealing with. But right now, I'll just take them points out to have a look. So I took them out and I cleaned them up. And I'll put them back in a minute. But whilst we've got this apart, we're just going to have a look at some other stuff. So what I was going to do is just see whether we got any play in here. And unfortunately we have. There's quite a bit of play on this distributor, and the trouble with that is that because these cams, it's where these cams spinning round is what makes the points open. That's going to alter how much and when our points open, and the dwell angle, which is the angle for the amount of time the points are open or closed. But anyway, that's it. So we've got some play in there. I'm not happy about that, so we need to look at this a bit further. And also the other thing I'll quickly check is that the advanced retard mechanism is working. So this is a vacuum advanced retard. So this pulls this plate round when you have vacuum on here, which is what I pulled that tube off. So I'm just going to put a little vacuum testing gauge on there to see this work. And that alters the angle of this plate, which effectively advances the points. So it moves them round and advance where they do. So this moving, when this says the vacuum on it, this will pull this, which will move that round. So it'll move it that direction, which will mean it will fire earlier, which means that this must be turning clockwise. So we know this must rotate clockwise by the fact that this is going counterclockwise to advance it. Well, that's so long as they've got the right distributor in there. And it's not, if you put the wrong distributor in there, it might be retarding as you rev the engine up. But I'm sure it's the right distributor, because it wouldn't run so well if it didn't. Mind you, it's not running, is it? But that's not what it is not running for. Right, so that goes on there, that goes on there. And then I should be able to pump this up, and we should see that move. So if I get that on there properly so it seals, and let's see what we got. So you see it's gone to full advance. And if I let the vacuum off, swings back. So if you watch on the gauge, you'll see I'm pulling vacuum with this gauge. So yeah, got full vacuum, and then I let it off. But there's a little lever under here that lets the vacuum off. So that's working. So advanced retard's working. So it's 2 little tests here. But yeah, I'm gonna have to look at this further, this strip, because we've got that play on the shaft. I've got to work out what's going on there, but that's a job for another day. Right now I'm just trying to get the thing back together and get it running. I've had these points out and I've cleaned them up. So I've cleaned up the contacts, and I've just done those on a little bit of wet and dry paper, little fine bit of wet and dry paper. So I've done that. So I'll pop these back in. So that one goes on there, goes over that post there, and then I've got to get that little screw in there. And this is our adjuster screw. This holds it down, and then we can adjust it via that. And what I'm trying to do is not get dirt onto the, whilst handling it, onto that contact face. But I can clean that up when I've got them set up at the end in there. So that just holds the base plate in. If I move it in that direction, that's open them up fully. Then I've got to assemble the next bit of them. But what I've noticed with this is when I've assembled them, so this has to have this little insulator on there. Insulate it from there because that's on earth, and this is going to be the live one. What I'll pop that in, but I've noticed something funny here, but I'll get this in first and then we'll see what we got. So if I pop that in there and pop that down. Right, so we've got something going on here. That should have a little something going on there to hold them, to stop them climbing up. And also there's a massive gap here. And if we look at where our points are, look, all over the place. What's going on there? That's sitting way too low. So this should have something underneath it to lift it. So it should have some sort of fibre washer or something going on there. So what I'm going to do is go through my box of washers and see what I've got. But something ain't right there, and I don't know why that's like that. And it didn't seem to have anything on it when I took it apart. So all I'm wondering is if it just sort of was sitting there, just by chance sitting at the right level. I do not know. I'm not sure what to make of that. Doesn't make any sense at all. I think someone assembled that wrong, and it was missing a washer on the bottom of it. Now you used to get these little, Lucas invented these little sets of points that had a little cam on there that actually would raise that up and down. Because what you can do is you can get a little high spot on here, and they made these ones that had a little cam that sort of made them go up and down like that. But this isn't supposed to be like that, definitely not. Something ain't right there. Right, here's my box of bits. Let's see if we've got something suitable for that. That sort of thing, innit, I'd have thought. So pop that on there, and let's see what this does. That sits better, doesn't it? Still a bit low. It looks to me like that's sitting a bit better. It was way low before. Almost wants to be up a bit, doesn't it, like that? Let's see if we can... See, that sits nicer there, doesn't it? They're in line there, and that brings it up nearer to where that ridge is. Maybe I'll try another washer underneath it. Not sure about this. I reckon this set of points is a bit wonky, but we're going to get some new ones anyway. This is just for the purposes of what we're doing now, to have a look at it and see what we got. So, and to make a little film about it. Yeah, I don't know why they're sitting so low. That's a bit weird, but we'll see. We'll see. Let's try that and see if it's any better. It's about right, isn't it? That's about right, and then that puts us round about that height. I'm going to go with that for now. And what I'm going to do is find a little E-clip to go on there. You sometimes have little wire clips on there, but I'm going to put a little E-clip on there. That'll stop them rising up on there, and that'll do for now. And then we'll gap them up and put them in and see if it'll start. That's why it's an E-clip, because it looks like an E. It's probably not. It's probably got a real reason why it's called an E-clip, and that's just me being stupid. But yeah, I don't know. Someone will say, won't they, in the comments? Oh no, it's because it's a elastic clip or something. I don't know. Anyway, I think it's because they look like an E. So we want that little one on there. That should hold it in place, shouldn't it? I can get that to go in there. So normally they have more like an R clip actually on these, or a little. They have something a bit different to this on there, but this will do. Right, there you go. That'll hold it. See, that sits on there nicely. So right, so now we've got to look at the points gap, which is that bit there. When this comes round on cam, that's what they call a cam. When that comes round there, that opens the points. And what we're looking at is the points air gap, and that will be 15 thousandths of an inch, I think, because that's what all Lucas distributors are set to, and loads of other ones. So a little dinky feeler gauge set, and let's find the 15 thousandths. That's a 20 thou. 19, going in the right direction. 16. That's a 15 thousandths of an inch. There we go. So that's that one. Now you don't want a load of grease on it because then you put it on the actual contacts when you're doing it. So I'll get a little rag to wipe that with. Or perhaps I'll use my Levi's. Anyway. Right. Okay. So we want that on cam, don't we, like that. And then what we're trying to do is trying to put that in there and see what gap we've got. Right. It's too wide at the minute. So let's open this up a bit. I used to be able to do these with my eye without even having to use the feeler gauges. But now with my dimpsy old eyes, I have to need a bit of help. Right, there you go, that ain't too bad. Now sometimes when you close it, it does sort of alter them a bit. When you do this up, as you do the base plate up, it does upset them sometimes. Yeah, you see that's widened that up a bit, hasn't it? Let's go back onto here. That's all right. Not so bad. Check that's tight enough. Nothing wrong with that. Right, I'll move it round a bit onto another cam. See how it opens and closes. Right, let's just try that. Right, that's all right. But now, you know I was saying there's that wear in that shaft. See what I mean? Look. Look at that. So if I push this shaft over in that direction, how much it opens it. And that's the trouble. So that could be oscillating like that, altering that points gap all the time when it's running. So I'm not sure about that. I'm not going to say much more about it at the minute, but that's the problem. So we've now got to get this one onto here. This is something I'm going to look further into. You know, this is just for now. I'm just having a quick, little setup. I'm going to come back to this with a new set of points, but I'm also going to see. I'm going to take this strip apart and see if I can't make a bush up for it or something. I'd like to take some of that play out of it. So I've just got to tighten that up, make this connection here. Right, I'll just get something to do that up with. Right, I'm just nipping this up for now because we're going to come back to this next week, but at least it can, it'll work for now, won't it? I think we need to get some new points ordered up and have a look at what's going on with these. And as I said, sort out that what's going on with that bush. See what we've got. Okay, well that's that. So we've got to install it back in the car. But here's a little trick we do. So that's some open, that's some closed. So what we want to do is we want to make sure there's no grease got on the end of these. And this is quite often a trick with new points. When you buy new ones, particularly new old stock that have sat around for ages, sometimes they need a clean up before you can use them. Now I've already cleaned those on some wet and dry paper, but what I want to do right now is just clean that up. So what you do, if it's a new points, quite often you just use a bit of the box that the points come in. You just tear a bit of the box off and use that. The purposes of that, I'll find just want a bit of card really. Yeah, got stuff everywhere, but not a bit of card that I want. Any bit of paper will do. Anything will do, because we're just cleaning the face of it off. We're not worried about. What we're trying to do is just clean any grease off of them. So if we get them in the open position like that, poke something in there like this. Say card's best really, but this will do if you can't find any card. The best thing to use is the box that you just took them out of. I can't do that, that's not doing it. Why is that not working? So pop that in there, and then let them close. Then that's got them under a bit of tension. Then what you can do is sort of pull it out. But if you're using card, you can pull it to and fro a few times. And then you can look at it to see if it's got any dirt on it. And if it's got dirt on it, then you know you're cleaning them, but you also know that it had dirt on them in the first place. And if you had grease on there, it might not fire. So yeah, get it without that. Yeah, let's say a box is perfect because your little cardboard box the points comes in. You can jiggle it to and fro. Obviously this paper, it only lets me go one way, because the other way it collapses, you see. But yeah, anyway, that's it. That should clean them up enough. Right, now we're going to install them, see what we got. So we'll pop our rotor arm back on. Remember, it's got a pimple in there, so it's only going to go on one way. So pop that on, and then we've got to put this back in, haven't we? So let's go and have a look at that. Now, we know we've got issues here, haven't we, with playing this distributor. We know this isn't quite right, so we're just doing our best here, aren't we? For the purposes of today, we know we've got to come back to some of this. Now, what did I say about fitting this? We want to end up with that rotor arm firing there, don't we? It wants to end up about there. Now, we know where this goes because someone helpfully marked it, which wasn't me, but that's why I didn't mark it, because it was already marked. We want that arm to end up there, but for that to get there, we've got that helical gear to engage, haven't we? So we're going to have to move it back in this direction. There you go, I think that's gone about right. And if we grab our cap and just offer it up and see what we got. Now the cap can only go on one place. It's got a pimple on it there. And that lines up with that pimple, doesn't it? And we pulled off the plug lead, didn't we, off of the corresponding one. So that's the contact there. So we know that's got to go there like that. So let's see where that goes. If we lift that off, that arm should be pointing directly to it. Now, if you go around that side, and let's see if it actually lines up when I take that off, because I think we might be a tooth out. So we're saying that's there. So that arm should be pointing to that where my finger is there. Does that look right, or does that look out a bit? I can't see from here. That should be directly in line with there. So, I'm just going to pop this down in there a bit. It'll move around a bit more as I tap it, so let's just make sure that ends up right. I just got to tap this down a bit. It's a little tight in the housing. Now this is quite a heavy steel construction, so it'll take a little bit of tapping with something soft like that, which is plastic. You wouldn't be tapping it with a hammer, would you? And you don't want to break anything, and if it's alley, you'd have to be a little bit careful on it, because that could be enough to bugger it up. Right, so, yeah, that's in line, isn't it? Lovely. Right, that'll do. That pops on there. Clip this back on. We can put our lead back on there, can't we? And we've got to put our plugs in. And we've got to put a live onto that distributor from the coil. So that'll come in a minute, won't it? So let's pop these in. Right, so we'll pop our plugs in. I'll just get something to do them up with. Right, now someone helpfully has marked these so we can see where they go. So that's one. That's two. That one, we don't know. That looks like three, doesn't it? I ought to mark these up a bit better than this, but yeah. And I'm not sure we won't change these leads for something more period correct. I think these look a bit weird to me. These are silicon filled ones, silicon carbon type ones, which isn't really the right thing for something old like this. You really want, anyway, it ain't right. Something's going on with this. What's going on here? Right, that's it. Yeah, really want copper core ones on here, not this sort of thing. Right, they're on. That's on. That one's for a king lead, so that's got to go to the coil. We've got a connection to go on there. And then we should be able to think about starting it. That on there. This all needs neatening up. I don't like this wiring, but that's a job for another day. We're just carrying on. And I'm also going to change that condenser. It might come back and do a part 2 to this, you know. Well, we got some nice bits for it. Right, that's that. Put the pinch bolt in. Holds the distributor on. Don't want that to fall off, do we? Although, as you saw, it went in there quite tight. I don't think it's falling off in any time soon, is it? I'm going to do this pinch bolt up. Because I had to raise that distributor up again, I'm just going to have to tap it down again. So I'll just pop this off again. Take a rotor on off so I don't hit that. Just give that a little tap. Right. You remember they stole the rotor arms, didn't they, in The Sound of Music when they were trying to escape? You don't do that on a modern car, do you? They stole the rotor arms out the cars so they couldn't chase them. A couple of spanners do that, nip that up, and then we should be all right. Oh no! Just as well I'm not on the scaffolding, isn't it? Right, well, that's nipped up, that'll be all right. So we can try and start it. So let's have a go. Now, I'm just going to pull a bit of fuel up on here, make sure we've got plenty of fuel up there. Got a little mechanical lever on the pump. Right, that's got fuel up, definitely got fuel up. Now, we're turning the engine over. We didn't use a spanner, did we? We were using the blades of the fan. But if we'd been using a spanner or a ratchet, we'd have to make sure we hadn't left it on the bottom pulley, because that can happen. People do that, start it up, and then the tries to undo the thing. Right. Okay, we should be all right. Let's see if it will start. Might not. Might not be the problem. I reckon that's all right. Sounds a bit happier there, doesn't it? Oh, that's all right. Can I go home now? Good night.